morning, everybody. It looks like most everybody is connected at this point. We've been waiting just a couple of seconds here to make sure. I'm Patricia Scott with Foster Swift. Thank you for joining us again at the second Wednesday morning break. Today, we're going to talk about business interruption insurance. This is being recorded, so if you miss something and you want to come back and watch it again, it will be posted to the website. In addition to that, this morning, if you want to submit questions, you can do so via the chat. And you're also welcome to unmute yourself and ask those questions verbally if you'd like to do so, because we kind of have a small group this morning. So we encourage you to do that. This morning, we have two of our Southfield attorneys with us, Paul Millenbach and Matt Fedor. Paul Millenbach is a litigator in Southfield, as I mentioned, and is a co-leader of the General Litigation Practice Group. Paul has extensive experience in advising corporate clients on all corporate matters, including transportation and commercial litigation. Paul is committed to keeping clients abreast of changes in the law. Paul frequently provides updates to a variety of groups, including transportation industry leaders, healthcare financial officers, and insurance companies. Welcome, Paul. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Matt Fedor focuses his practice on business law, acting as their general counsel, advising them in various aspects of the business cycle, from choice of entity at startup, buy-sell agreements, real estate transactions, contract review and negotiation, acquisitions through eventual sale or dissolution. Thank you, Matt, for joining us this morning. You've been here with us before, so thanks for coming back.
Good to be back, Patricia. Thank you.
You're welcome. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here. We're going to talk about business interruption insurance. And as I mentioned to you before we got started, I'm actually really excited because I don't even know a lot about business interruption insurance. So I think we should start with that. What is business interruption insurance?
Sure. So I'll start with that, Patricia. Business interruption insurance is a specific type of insurance. So typically it's carried as a provision of your general insurance coverage. It's an option that you can elect as a business to participate in or not. And business interruption coverage generally provides a vehicle to recoup costs that are often exceed property damage. So when we think of insurance, business insurance, we're talking about damage. So this is an additional coverage that goes beyond the property damage aspect of insurance. It works by protecting against the interruption of the insured's business operations caused by a covered risk. Coverage is designed to cover business income losses for a limited amount of time, typically while the business gets back on its feet. So if there's some event that causes an interruption to the actual business itself, it can provide for things like providing for payroll, providing for rent payments. It'll pay for insurance premiums, utility bills, taxes, things like that. So if there's an event that causes the interruption of the business interruption insurance will typically cover some of the costs associated with that loss. So again, we're not talking about the damage. So if there's an earthquake, for example, or a fire, then your business is shut down. And the business interruption insurance covers, lost profits, payroll, and those things that I mentioned.
You started to give a couple of examples, I think. I assume the policy defines those events that are covered.
Yeah, so the policy is really going to be the key here. And I think Paul's going to get into that a little bit later, but the policy language is key. So what we're talking about is two main things. When you're talking about the language itself, you have to have number one, it has to have that provision in there. That's not something that's automatically included. A lot of people think, oh, well, if I just get general business insurance, it's included in there. It is not. It's an elected thing. So you have to specifically have it. And then what it'll go through is it'll talk about what business interruption matters are included. So when we're talking about elements of a claim, one of the primary things that insurance companies have been putting in is a physical loss requirement. So in order for there to be a claim under most business interruption insurance policies, there has to be a physical loss. So I mentioned a fire, an earthquake. some type of physical damage that causes the business to be shut down. One of the second element that's typically found in these is that it has to be on covered property. So if you have multiple locations, you can insure multiple locations, and so it has to be damage to one of the covered properties under your policy. There's 6 elements. I'm just going to run through them real quick. So it's got to be physical loss or damage. It has to be to a covered property. It has to be caused by a covered peril during the policy period. So it has to be one of the listed items. So it'll list out fire, earthquake, physical damage. It has to be a listed cause under the policy. So it's important to read that policy language. The resulting it has to be an actual loss of income. So you have to actually lose money because of the claim. It has to be due to a necessary suspension of operations. So one of the classic examples is even if you don't necessarily sustain physical damage to your property, if the property next door is destroyed, for example, or damaged, and let's say the government comes in, the police or the local city comes in and shuts down an area, prohibiting you from opening up your business, that could be a necessary suspension of operations. You were prohibited from opening up your operations. That could also be a loss. And then it has to be during a period of restoration. So it's a finite period. It's not forever. And so the policy language will dictate how long or up to the maximum amount of time that you can make a claim. And typically that is during a restoration period.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. That is a lot. And so I think the big question too is, how does COVID affect business interruption insurance claims?
Sure. So COVID, so if you go back through, business interruption insurance is relatively new. It started, this century, and insurers added this as an option, probably in the 50s, 60s is when it really started becoming a viable option. And then if you remember back to the SARS epidemic back in the early 2000s, one of the biggest industries that was hit by that was the travel and the vacation industry. And so like hotels were getting shut down because of SARS, and sort of a smaller version of COVID. So after that, insurers started putting exceptions into their policies for virus-related events. And so the insurance company spent a lot of money because of the SARS claims. And then shortly after that is when they started putting in these exceptions. So you can have policies that don't have these exceptions, but if you do have business interruption insurance as part of your insurance coverage, you'll want to read the policy to see if there is an exception for virus exclusions.
Okay. Always an exception, right?
There's lots of exceptions. The policy language is going to be key in any of this. So if you do have business interruption insurance, we're going to recommend that you grab that policy language and read through it to initially decide where you're at from a claim standpoint.
So how or when, should I file a business interruption insurance claim?
I can answer that, Patricia. You should file one. What you first should do is take a look at your policy. You need to get a copy of the full policy. There are a lot of riders and attachments to the general business policy. And in those, you need to get the entire policy document. You can usually get it from your agent, possibly through the insurance company directly, but it's probably easiest to get it through your agent. Take a look at the policy, see if there's business interruption coverage in there. Likely there is. And then secondarily, look at whether or not there's one of the virus exclusions. Not all the policies have them, but as Matt mentioned, following SARS, the majority of them do now. And then you will see the virus exclusion will be pretty specific, that it excludes coverage for pandemics, disease, and whatever it might be. So it sounds fairly daunting when you read the policy in conjunction with the virus exclusion, you'd think that you would not have a claim whatsoever. But it's important to make a claim for a couple of reasons. One, you want to preserve any statute of limitations problem. You generally would have a 2-year time period to make a claim. You want to make sure that's done within 2 years from the damage. In the event that the law changes or that some case law comes out and interprets virus exclusions or eliminates virus exclusions, then you've already filed your claim. So it's very important for the claim to be made. And in terms of making the claim, there's no real formal way to do it unless it's outlined in the policy. But certainly what I would do is include your profit and loss statements, your claim for damages, anything that can give the insurance company a big picture of the amount of losses that you've suffered. And generally, from what I've seen in these matters, is every claim that my clients have filed or I've filed on their behalf, there has been a virus exclusion and the claim has been denied. That doesn't mean that it's over. Certainly, a lawsuit can be filed challenging the virus exclusion. It doesn't have to be, but it can be preserved until kind of case law develops in this area, because there's a significant amount of claims that are being filed for under these policies, particularly by the restaurant industry, theaters, and that sort of thing. So the answer is file a claim.
Okay, and that's what I just wanted to confirm. So even if I take a look at my policy and I see this exclusion and it seems pretty clear to me, I should file that claim anyway?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and that's because the law may change later, or because there's other avenues that you may be able to pursue if the claim is denied?
Correct.
Just want to make sure I understood correctly so that way everybody can. So what is, you mentioned that if the claim gets denied, there's other things that can be done like a lawsuit. So what is the status of litigation surrounding business insurance claims right now?
I hate to throw a lot of statistics out, but sometimes they tell it all. As of mid-February, nationally, there were 133 reported cases of that lawsuits that have been filed claiming COVID losses. 106 of them were dismissed by the court on a motion without any further investigation or discovery. 79 of those cases had virus exclusions. So it appears then that the virus exclusion is fairly strongly upheld. You would think even in a case where there was not a virus exclusion that the claim would be allowed by the court, but unfortunately in the 21 other cases, they were dismissed without a virus exclusion. However, there's 133, and if 106 were dismissed, you do the math. Some were allowed to exist, and certainly of those cases, 2 of them were granted in favor of the policyholder against the insurance company automatically without a trial. And the remaining ones were allowed to proceed to trial on questions of fact of whether or not the policy language applied. So it doesn't look good in terms of policyholders' claims currently, but those things change, and those will continue to change over time, depending on more courts' interpretations of them. In Michigan, there have been 3 reported cases, 2 federal court cases, and 1 Ingham County Circuit Court case. In all 3 of those cases, the claims were dismissed in favor of the insurance company, and all 3 of those policies did have virus exclusions in them. So Michigan currently isn't looking good in terms of making business interruption claims, but again, that's something that could change in the future. And what we're doing is monitoring that litigation to see if there's any of those changes that come in Michigan or nationally for that matter.
So
Yeah.
one of the other things I'll mention, Paul, along those lines is that, as I recall, those 3 cases in Michigan, there wasn't evidence of COVID in the workplace, right? So one of the threshold questions is, was there physical damage? And it's one of the things that we're looking for is a case that comes out where there was actual physical damage due to COVID, right? So that there was an outbreak at work, or there was some type of physical event that occurred on the site. So one of the things that we're counseling clients on is you really have to, if you're shut down because of the governor's order or something like that, that's a different situation than if you were closed because you're allowed to be open under the current laws, but there was a physical event that occurred due to COVID. So you had a customer that came in that created it. So the contact tracing and documenting where the COVID event occurred and how it occurred is very important for you to analyze if a situation like that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That seems very significant to me as well. So thank you for that. Is there anything else that you gentlemen want to share with the group? I don't see any questions in our chat. If anybody has any questions, now would be the time to either unmute yourself or go ahead and submit those. It seems to me, Matt, what you shared most recently there is that each set of facts are different. And to Paul's point about filing the claim, or reaching out to either one of you, obviously, to talk about this and pursuing a claim.
Yeah, they're all very fact specific, like in any other type of claim related to insurance companies.
Yeah, so obviously this is the novel coronavirus. And so we're encouraging clients to file a claim, even if you think that it's unlikely that you're going to be successful, because as Paul said, there's literally hundreds of that are being filed, and they'll continue to be filed. And as the case law develops, there may be avenues for your specific set of circumstances where you may be able to succeed on a claim. As we go through this, we're going through the analysis. I mentioned all the elements that you have to prove. Each one of those is very fact intensive. So document. Try to do your best as far as ascertaining where the case came from and who was involved, and definitely reach out to your attorney to potentially file a claim. Even if you get denied, there's really no damage in filing a claim.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Thank you for that. Anything else for the group? This has been very informative and helpful. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us this morning, and for all of you for joining us. Next month, our second Wednesday morning break will be on April 14th, and we're going to have Alicia Barak from our Southfield office. Southfield is winning this year. And she's going to talk about workers' comp issues, especially in relation to this COVID world, and whether or not they're work-related, whether or not you can mitigate, and whether work from home injuries are covered under workers' comp. So that too is going to, I think, be very interesting for us to tune in for. So with that, let us know, let either one of these gentlemen know if you have any questions, or if you need to rewatch, it'll be on the website. Take care and have a great day.
Thank you,
you.
Patricia.